Hello everybody, I'm going to walk through soldering a 2x2mm IC. So I had accidentally designed the board incorrectly and I got stuck with having to put a 2x2mm IC chip for an op amp, a dual op amp on this particular board. It's a very small board, as you can see on the grips. So I used the chip quick solder or paste, and I had actually mixed it. I thought I had a little video of it, but I guess I missed some of it. You can see I'm mixing the just a regular no clean flux with the chip quick to help make it a little bit thinner, and then also allow it to kind of stay on the board. So I'm just mixing it up with my little pick. I have a little right angle pick over here, and then in a moment you'll see I'm gonna put a small video on the bottom right corner of the screen to have a magnifying glass or magnifying image of what I'm doing. So you can see that little plate that I had there that I was mixing up the solder in. And then this solder, you can see I'm slowly applying it to the plate, and in a second here you'll see what that starts to look like. So here we have on the right hand side of the bottom corner, you can see you don't need a lot of this paste, especially because the IC, as you can tell, is so tiny. I put some on the positions for the resistors, which are also surface mount resistors, which are probably 3 times the size of the IC, each resistor. So I apply this paste, and I'm trying to not get too crazy with it. Using the tip of this tiny little pick is helpful. It's important to be able to get the paste on there, but also be able to see the outline, so when I get ready to place the chip on there, or the IC on there, I'll be able to place it in the right place. So I'm just putting the rest of the solder. Here I'm trying to clean up the IC pad a little bit better, because if I have too much on there, it's going to bridge all of the contacts, because there's actually four leads on each side of the IC, and then there's the center pad, which also gets soldered, which in my case doesn't actually do anything, but it was there because it's part of the footprint when I designed the board, which was a mistake. I didn't really need it for this particular application. So once I get the paste all in place, I think I have a small enough amount, but enough to do the job. I have to put the IC. You can see the size of the IC on my fingertip there on the video. And me trying to place, this is very fun, trying to place this tiny, you can see it on the, actually a little zoomed in image of it, placing the IC in the right location. Tiny little dot on the IC, which you can see on the bottom right, on the bottom right of the actual square, and that's the pin number 1 location. And then I used the hot air rework station. I think I had it set to about 300 degrees, somewhere around there, to try to heat the solder paste and flux up. And the goal is that if you heat it up and you have enough of it, it will essentially suck the IC into the right location. So as you can see here, I actually used a very small tip on the hot air rework station, which I ended up changing to a larger tip, because you can see shortly it will actually move the IC around, which the airflow is just too much. I even tried to turn it down a little bit, but I think it was just still the velocity was too high for this IC. But when you're heating it up, if you're careful enough, you'll notice that the solder is starting to solidify. Of course, I had to get my little pick out and fix the position of the IC. It was a little easier to see with the outline, at least, once I got some of the solder paste to melt. So I wish I had better lighting, but I'm working with minimal. This is the first time using my magnifying camera that I have, that I've probably had for 2 years now, so it's not the best quality, but it's good enough for me to be able to see what I was doing. So essentially I'm trying to heat up the right side of the IC, and getting the solder paste to melt on the right side and suck into the 4 pins, and then I'll move the gun over to the left side and heat up the left side and hope for the same thing, that the solder will solidify and connect the 4 pins on the left side to the pads on the circuit board. So there's also obviously underneath the IC, right to the base of the IC. I'm trying to move it into place a little bit. Like I said, my updated circuit board with the correct IC, not this tiny little one, actually has much larger contact points, so this should not be a big issue. But keeping this tiny IC in place with a hot ARE workstation is difficult, but as you can see, it can be done for sure. And then once I think I have it all in place, I did work it a couple more times at each side, because at least if you have one or left or the right side in place, you can reheat another side to make sure that it's good. The other trick you can do at the end is you can take a hot iron and you can just run it across the contacts like I'm doing here, and then I'll have reheat them and make sure there's no bridged contacts, because I did have a couple of contacts that were actually bridged. And so what I did was I used the very fine soldering tip. Hopefully you can see it well here. But you can actually see the 4 individual contacts that are there, but I use a little hot iron tip, and you can just run it, clean tip, and you can run it right along the edge, and that can essentially re-solder those individual pins back into place, especially if you have too much solder somewhere and it's bridging the gaps. And the final piece was just using the regular solder iron after I had the surface mount components on. Take a little bit of flux, put some flux on the through hole components for this switch, which I have here. Just helps the other solder just really get in there very quickly, get the job done, and you don't have to worry about heating up the joint too much or overheating the switch on the other side. And then using some small solder, my small solder iron tip. You can see here, just solder sucks right in with the flux. It does a really nice job. With that completed, although I did all this hard work for this circuit, I realized that I had designed something incorrectly on it, and one of the pins, pin number 4, needed to be connected to ground, and it was not. So all of this work was really just practice, and I hope it has shown you that it can be done to solder a 2x2mm IC chip. Thank you.